Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. We get clear together. Are you truly living the life that you were created to live? A housing market update with some perspective that can totally shift your real estate thought paradigm. Then, 12 actionable ways that you can raise the rent and add value to your property today on Get Rich Education. Taxes are your biggest expense. The best way to reduce your burden is real estate. Increase your income with amazing returns and reduce your taxable income with real estate write-offs. As an employee with a high salary, you're devastated by taxes. Lighten your tax burden with real estate incentives. You can offset your income from a W-2 job and from capital gains. Freedom Family Investments is the experienced partner you've been looking for. The Real Estate Insider Fund is that vehicle. This fund invests in real estate projects that make an impact, and you can join with as little as $50,000. Insiders get preferred returns of 10 to 12%. This means you get paid first. Insiders enjoy cash flow on a quarterly basis, and the tax benefits are life-changing. Join the Freedom Family and become a real estate insider. Start on your path to financial freedom through passive income. Text FAMILY to 66866. This is not a solicitation and is for accredited investors only. Please text FAMILY to 66866 for complete details.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Johannesburg, South Africa to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm Keith Weinhold, and this is Get Rich Education. Last night, people were losing sleep over money, and at the same time, last night, you made money as you slept. But are you living the life that you were created to live? Your big ideas, your grandiose hopes and ambitions that you promised yourself that you would follow through on someday, have they turned into fears, or are you really doing those things? I mean, even those ones that you had as a child, like to be an astronaut or a firefighter someday. Well, today, it might simply be that you would like to quit your soul-sucking job. And I think one way to measure this is, okay, first let's go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How many of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs are you fulfilling? Are you fulfilling all 5? There are 5 levels. Okay, the base level, it starts out with just your simple, basic physiological needs like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, and clothing. Chances are you've got those things fulfilled if you're listening to this. So let's go up to the second level. Safety needs. How about your personal security, employment, resources, health, property? Chances are you've got that in place too. You're meeting Maslow's second hierarchy of needs here. How about the third one? Love and belonging. We're talking about things like friendship, intimacy, family, a sense of connection. How are you doing there? How about the fourth one? Okay, if you've got those first 3 together, do you have the fourth one? Esteem. This means things like respect and self-esteem, perhaps even status, recognition, strength, and some sense of freedom. You might very well have those things, but how about the fifth one? That's what we're talking about here. To live the life that you were created to live on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that is the self-actualization, the highest one, and that means that's your desire to become the most that one can be. Do you have that? What are you doing to live your life in the way that it's the most that it could possibly be? If you get financial freedom, now you can control your time and have a chance of living the life that you were created to live. But how do most people think of financial betterment? Oh, in a faulty way, like these ridiculous, absurd things like, if you get your hair cut at home and you brew your own coffee at home, you might be able to save $6 a day. Or when it comes to their entertainment, oh my gosh, it just gets embarrassing. Hey, men's fast pitch softball at the Moose Lodge is still free. Oh, geez, is that like your apex of entertainment? Or you could save a whopping $80 on flight tickets by adding an extra layover on your trip itinerary. Or it's buy one, get one free week on Hillshire Farm brand bacon at the supermarket. All right, I mean, gosh. And then, how do you know that all those things right there do not move the meter in your life? It's because, just ask, how many times would you have to do an activity like that, like an unnecessary flight layover, in order to acquire wealth? And the answer is none. It doesn't apply. You could practically do that an infinite number of times, and you still wouldn't acquire wealth in order to create the time to live the life that you want. But how many times would you need to add a flight layover in order to make you miserable? Well, there is a number. There is a certain number for that. Doing those trivial things, that only helps ensure that you stay at a soul-sucking job as well, because rather than taking your time, which is a zero-sum game, rather than having your time engaged in expansionary activities, you were focused on these contracting sort of things. You were focused where there's a low upside rather than activities that have an upside with no ceiling. That's what you want to bring into your life. And another way to ask if the activity is expansionary and moving you toward financial freedom, another way to think about this is, did you overcome fear in fulfilling that task? And yes, it is an inconvenient truth that facing and overcoming fear is what makes you grow. Well, did you overcome fear when you brewed coffee at home or got some stupid discount on grocery store bacon? What are the activities that you're doing that move you toward financial freedom, not debt freedom, but financial freedom, and overcome fear and grow? Okay, that's an activity like making your first home a fourplex with an FHA loan, or repositioning your dead equity like Chaley Ridge and I discussed here 2 weeks ago, or buying an income property across state lines, or learning how to become a savvy private lender, or finding out how to become an accredited investor. Are you living the life that you were created to live? Now you've got some examples, some milestones, and some checkpoints, so you're going to better know if you're either on the right trajectory, or hopefully, if you've been listening here long enough, you are living that life now. Why would you live one more day of your life below your means than what's absolutely necessary? That below your means stuff, that should only be a short-term life mode. Don't live below your means, grow your means, and live the life that you were created to live. But the major media channels stir up so much fear, and even niche channels, that it can often paralyze even some clear thinkers, despite the fact that today's real estate appreciation rates are quite normalized and they're modestly growing now. Some people just still want to harbor this unfounded fear over real estate or even the short-term market's direction. And, non-doers, they're always trying to do things like time the market or justify timing the market, and that doesn't work. And, here is what fearful perma-bears are concerned about. It's always something for them in real estate. In 2012, it was shadow inventory. Remember that? That never came to pass, just like most all this stuff doesn't. In 2013, the fear was boomers are downsizing. They're going to be selling their real estate. In 2014, it was rates spiking. In 2015, it was a PMI recession. In 2016, it was vacant units, believe it or not. My gosh, that was a terrible miss. In 2017, it was, now nominal home prices are above the pre-global financial crisis peak. Yeah, well, so what? They should be. In 2018, it was 5% mortgage rates. That was the fear. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. And in 2019, I actually don't remember what the fear was that year. That was a fairly uniform year, but some people stirred up fear about something in order to get clicks. Call it a recession. In 2020, it was the pandemic. In 2021, it was fear of a forbearance crisis. In 2022, the fear was rising mortgage rates are going to cause a housing price crash. And then there's this collapse in sales volume. And then in 2023, I don't know, what's the fear now? Are we back to recession fears again? I mean, gosh, people have been steadily forecasting that for 12 to 18 months now, this coming recession is just around the corner. It still isn't here. And it isn't even on the horizon either because job growth numbers keep beating expectations. So if you're waiting to invest in the most prudent investment of all time, real estate, or even something like gold or Bitcoin or stocks or bonds or whatever, if you're waiting until all the uncertainty abates and completely dissipates, well, then you're never going to be investing again for the rest of your life. About the only certain thing in the investing world is persistent inflation and the fact that people are going to need a good place to live. Okay, those are like two of the very few certain things. I invest in the certainties, not get paralyzed with uncertainty. And this way, we don't get too caught up in the latest investing fad either. Oftentimes, I think stock investors tend to do this more. For example, for that crowd, in 2017, it was anything around the blockchain. And in 2021, it was the metaverse. And in 2023, now it's like AI. That's the term that's instigated almost a Pavlovian response from investors, all salivating over the potential hundreds of billions in value that could be unlocked by the new technology until that gets oversold. Now, there is some opportunity in some of those things for sure, but as soon as people lose money in them, well, they start to revert back to the principles. And in a lot of ways, we stick to principles here, even if some of them are counterintuitive, countercultural principles, like financially free beats debt free. Yeah, keep your debt and get more of it. More debt means you own more real estate. U.S. housing prices have stabilized and they are heading up this spring. They have gone from modest declines or just steady prices to modest growth in most regions. That's, by the way, the summary from my latest light reading duty, my assignment to read FHFA's monthly housing report. It's released every month, and just to hit some of the big highlights from the latest one. And all these stats are through February, and with nominal pricing, every division east of the Mississippi is up 5 to 8% annually. The Pacific Division, and that's the one that was hurt most, saw a 3% decline. Nationally, overall, home prices are up 4% year over year. And by the way, this index covers 400 plus American cities. It's pretty comprehensive, and spring numbers are going to be factored in soon. And since it's property buying season, appreciation rates are likely going to rise more from here. And like I've stated before, and really I'm becoming somewhat known for talking about this in the industry lately. In fact, just last week I was in Arizona and shared this on Ken McElroy's show. The housing crash is a 100% certainty. That is because it has already happened. It was a housing supply crash 3 years ago, and that prevents a price crash. So then let's look at some of the best appreciating markets in the U.S. here, just the quick top 10. And notice how widespread this national home price appreciation is. So it really just excludes the western third or western quarter of U.S. states. So the market with the 10th most appreciation, and this is all year over year through Q1 per the NAR here. Now with this, Santa Fe, New Mexico up 12%. 9th is Hickory, Morganton, North Carolina up 12%. 8th is Appleton, Wisconsin up 12.5%. 7th is the Milwaukee, Waukesha, West Allis, Wisconsin area up 14%. Year over year. I'm doing some rounding here. 6th is Oklahoma City up 15%. Elmira, New York. Hey, I grew up near there. That's up 15%. So that is 5th. 4th is Burlington, North Carolina up 15% year over year. 3rd is Warner Robins, Georgia up 16%. 2nd is Oshkosh, Neenah, Wisconsin at 17%. And number 1 in the nation for home price appreciation is the Kingsport, Bristol area, which spans Virginia and Tennessee, up 19%. I'm going to discuss apartments in a minute, but those there, they, again, are the 10 U.S. areas with the largest single-family home price increase annually. In the information age, a bad reputation, that's going to follow you around like your cat like internet tracking cookies, and like a song that you can't get out of your head. Apartment reputation scores are a broad measure of renters' satisfaction. And it's pretty amazing to see how closely, check this out, how closely they track the macro trends that impact tenants and property managers. And what I'm referencing here is J. Turner Research's online reputation assessment scores from today and going back to March 2020. And there's a very telling pattern here. You can see what's going on in real estate, in these apartment buildings, and societally. From spring to summer of 2020, that's when COVID descended. Lockdowns were here. Reputation scores for apartment buildings plummeted. Property managers struggled because they had to rapidly adjust to this new era where renters live and worked inside their units 24/7. Everyone started using Zoom. Maintenance techs could rarely even go inside units for repairs. You can understand why people weren't happy. Entropy ran rampant. Parents didn't know what to do with their children. Fear reigned. Common spaces closed, so tenants weren't happy. Property managers weren't happy. Ratings, feedback were low. And then fast forward to the fall of 2020 through to the summer of 2021. Okay, this was the boom period for apartments. Property managers solved for the new era. They adopted new technology, new strategy, and they also reopened amenity spaces and in-unit maintenance. Hey, foosball in the clubhouse was back. Apartment demand surged and reputation scores went back up. Then fast forward to late 2021, apartment occupancy rates hit record highs. Property managers again wrestled with on-site staffing shortages, but could this ultra-low vacancy and this still robust leasing traffic, could that put so much strain on property managers that their reputation scores would start to drop again? Well, no, because in early 2022, reputation scores climbed back up to new highs again. Property managers adjusted to this rapidly changing climate. A lot of them leaned on adoption of centralization tech and their changes in management practices. And then fast forward to mid or late 2022, apartment reputation scores fell back just a little. That's when consumers saw peak inflation, and see that inflation included renewal rent increases. So that's why apartment reputation scores stepped back just a little, but overall they were higher than they were 2 years earlier. And then also during this period, demand for all housing types, not just apartments, it began to slow somewhat, and you didn't see the high rent growth that you had. And that put a bit more strain on property managers when we got later into this phase. Inflation hit everyone for a while, with big price hikes in property insurance and taxes and maintenance and turnover and labor and utilities. And then this year, apartment reputation scores are on the rise again. In fact, they have hit new multi-year highs. We've got consumer inflation cooling down. The new inflation number came in at 4.9% last week, while vacancy rates and leasing traffic returned to more normal levels. We've had this stabilization. Overall, in the real estate market, you've got somewhat of a sense of normalcy returning, with low supply being the big outlier. And at the same time, this new tech that was adopted in the pandemic area, that's really having long-term benefits for both tenants and for managers. And in recent years, property managers have focused on resident satisfaction. That's where their focus has been. So really, it's no coincidence that reputation scores keep improving. Now, today, as an investor, chances are that you have a low loss to purchase. Okay, what is a loss to purchase, and what does that mean to you? Well, your tenants are leaving to go buy something else, not very often at all. You, as an investor in either single-family rentals or condos or apartments, you can retain residents right now because it's so hard for them to go off and buy their own starter home. And why is that? Well, it's not just the higher mortgage rates. It's the fact that they're coupled with credit availability that's really low. It's really difficult. As you know, that in order to get a mortgage loan, you need to have a lot of good documentation in income and assets. Well, that is what keeps your rent-paying tenant in place. You're having a low loss to purchase. In 2005, we were in the opposite condition. Back then, tenants fled my units. I had a hard time retaining tenants in 2005. Why? I don't think it's because I was a bad landlord. It's because it was so easy to get a loan. You could just go and lie about everything on a mortgage application and no one even checked the accuracy. Bloated appraisal values even came flying in. That's why my rental property tenants kept leaving. It seemed like they were always going to buy a first-time condo back in 2005 in my case. Well, today you can retain your tenants. That's your upside of today's harder housing affordability and the stringent lending requirements. So in this normalizing housing era where tenants have to live in your rental unit longer because they have no alternative, you can find the properties most conducive to this strategy where thousands of others have created a quick account to acquire the best properties and the best insider deals at our marketplace, gremarketplace.com. It is not like a big box store there. It is more like an organic farmer's market. That's where the good stuff is. So check back often for new inventory at gremarketplace.com. You're listening to episode 449 of the GRE podcast. And of those 449, I think that 2 of them were quite good. Coming up shortly, 12 ways for you to raise rent and add value to your property. But if you get value from the show here, hey, please tell a friend about it. I'd really appreciate it. Go ahead and share it on your social media. More straight ahead, I'm Keith Weinhold. You're listening to Get Rich Education. With JWB Real Estate Capital, Jacksonville real estate has outperformed the stock market by 44% over the last 20 years. It's proven to be a more stable asset, especially during recessions. Their vertically integrated strategy has led to 79% more home price appreciation compared to the average Jacksonville investor since 2013. JWB is ready to help your money, and to make it easy for everyday investors. Get started at jwbrealestate.com/GRE. That's jwbrealestate.com/GRE. GRE listeners can't stop talking about their service from Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. They've provided our tribe with more loans than anyone. They're truly a top lender for beginners and veterans. It's where I go to get my own loans for single-family rental property up to 4plexes. So start your pre-qualification and you can chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. They'll even deliver your custom plan for growing your real estate portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is GRE Operations Lead Andrea Newbern. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
You're listening to one of the longest running and most listened to shows on real estate investing, real estate economics, and wealth mindset. Welcome back to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Here in springtime, you're more likely to think about how to add value to your property and increase your long-term tenant retention. Leasing your property faster and higher quality tenants is going to increase your return, and renting for a higher price and increasing the rent upon renewal is going to do that too. And so will preventing maintenance problems before they occur, and that's also going to increase your tenant retention. So let's look at the first of 12 ways. Here are 12 ways that you can raise the rent and add value to your property, improve the appearance of the front of the property. You know, it's often been noted that people make up their minds about you within 7 seconds of meeting you. So you don't have long to make a first impression, and neither does your rental. So simple aesthetic improvements like window shutters and painting the front door. Boy, that front door is really important. mowing the lawn, trimming any bushes or trees, replacing the mailbox or the address numbers. Those are the types of things that can be hugely important, things that are at eye level as you walk up and approach that property. If you put time into those exact things, that can give you a 2x, 3x, 5x, or 10x return on your time. It can just make an amazing difference, not just in getting a property rented faster and not just in you getting top dollar for it, but also attracting a higher quality tenant at the same time. The second way is with quality advertising. I've heard it said once in a while that all we need to do to rent a house is put a sign in the yard. All right, but I think that's the wrong approach. If all you have is a sign in the yard, you're not going to have as much interest as if it was online everywhere. Fewer eyeballs means fewer prospects, and that means less demand. And when the supply stays the same, the only consequence is a lower rent price that you're going to get. So renting a property with only a sign, it probably means that you're under renting it. The third way to raise the rent and increase the value of your property is with high quality pictures. This increases your renter pool and that increases the rent amount that you get. Outdoors, be sure to take pictures of the property at about a 30-degree angle because head-on pictures make the property look smaller. Indoors, turn on all of the lights before you take photos. Everything, all of the lights, even that little light over the oven range. Well-lit photos, it makes your place look cleaner and roomier, and it just simply gives your prospective renters a good look at it, which is what they want. And a dimly lit photo, in a lot of cases, that is worse than no photo at all. In the bathroom, the toilet lid should be shut before photos. I really can't believe how often I see dimly lit photos in rental property listings. The blinds should be open as well. And also put some air fresheners in the unit to make it smell pleasant. It's been said that the sense of smell is closely linked with memory, probably more so than any of your other four senses. And if the property smells good, then when the prospect goes home to kind of debate and think about which unit they want of the many that they've seen, yours is a bit more likely to stand out in their memory. And I've been to real estate open houses before where the agent bakes cookies in the oven in order to get that scent into the home. The fourth way to raise the rent and add value to your property is don't just show a property, sell a property. Now, if you're just opening the door and hoping the prospect is going to like your unit, or maybe your property manager is doing this, well, you're doing it wrong. There are really three great methods for selling during a showing: building rapport, using anchors, and using reciprocation. All right, some of this stuff can sound a little hokey, but just hear me out. Building rapport, that just means that you're genuinely friendly and open and you're interested in that prospect. Just ask questions, just shoot the breeze a bit. At the same time, don't oversell it. Don't be pushy. People want to rent from people that they like. When you're showing houses, an anchor is saying something like, I would often use I love this house. Just before you're opening the door, or just before you're opening the door, say the kitchen in this house is amazing. You're kind of anchoring that thought with them. It might make sense, particularly in hot markets, to use the rule of reciprocation. By virtue of the rule of reciprocity, people are obligated to repay favors and gifts and invitations and things like that. Psychologically, this works by people wanting to return if you were kind to them, say by renting from you. That's what they would give you in return of you doing something nice for them. This could feel manipulative, but come on, you're not going to convince someone to rent a trashy place from you if you give them $5. So if you're renting a good property, what the rule of reciprocation does is it sets you apart from your competition's equally good property. And putting offers like that in your advertising, that's also going to help elicit traffic to your properties. If there's an oversupply of housing in your town, you could do something like offer a free pizza coupon to a popular pizza shop just for viewing one of your properties, especially in something like a college town. offer concert tickets to local events. I mean, there are just lots of possibilities like that. Now, here today, we're not really in a part of the market cycle where you'd have to use that one very often. Nationally, we're in this undersupplied market, and we could be for more than a decade. The fifth way to raise the rent and add value to your property is don't start your rental price too low, usually. The basic principle with apartment rents is that if you have low occupancy, you can't raise your rent. But if your occupancy is really high, 90 or 95% or more, then it's usually time to increase the rent. Now with houses though, it can be harder for you to know what to rent a place for, since in a lot of cases there's only one of them. And yes, you can comp it out on some websites like Zillow or Rent-A-Meter, or you can ask the neighbors, but you can't be perfect. So my recommendation is to approach renting a house from the perspective that you can fix a property that's priced too high and bring it down, but it's hard to fix that price if it's priced too low because someone's going to accept that price, then you can't really bring it up. And if you under rent a property, you're just stuck with it. But if you set the price too high, you're going to quickly know it's too expensive because you aren't getting any hits, you're not getting any traffic. Then you can quickly adjust the price downward from there. So that's why you want to start trying to rent your property near the top of the range that you think it can rent for. Only then do you quickly adjust down. And you don't want to go crazy with this or have it at a high price for too long, because every day a unit sits on the market means that that rent is lost forever. And if you have a lot of vacancies or it's in the middle of the winter and few people are looking for a rental, you should certainly be more aggressive and bring it down faster. But in most cases, it's better to start at the high range than it is the low one. The sixth way is for you to screen your prospective tenant and then even screen some more. High rent is useless if you're settling for bad tenants. It's better to have a property sit vacant than it is to rent to a bad tenant. Just imagine having a tenant that does over $10,000 in damage. I mean, that kind of thing, that'll ruin your cash flow for quite a while. It also creates stress for you. So make sure to check for evictions, their criminal record, and their credit, and get landlord and employment references. I don't like to accept evictions or felonies. The tenant should also make more than 3 times the monthly rent in income. Most anyone knows that as a rule of thumb. And finally, if you're self-managing instead of using a professional manager, I would recommend turning over your employment and your landlord references to a company that does this sort of thing professionally. They can help place the tenant even if you want a management. There's an incentive for you to kind of hear what you want to hear if you check these things yourself, and that can bias your evaluation when you're talking to this prospective tenant's former landlords and current and past employers. And then you accept these marginal prospects that you probably should have declined. So third-party companies, they could care less about that stuff. So their search is clear-cut. The seventh way is usually raise the rent upon the lease renewal. I once heard it said that tenants expect you to raise their rent each year, so don't disappoint them. These increases, at least they're going to keep your rent the same in inflation-adjusted terms. And as you know, if you're leveraged with a mortgage loan on the property, like I've discussed elsewhere, then that's going to improve your bottom line. Because remember, assuming you're cash flowing, every additional dollar you get in rent is pure profit. It's also important to let tenants know that it's coming beforehand. So at the time they sign their lease, you might even want to have a rent escalator in there that it's automatically going to go up 5% every year. That really goes a long way, baking it in, and then your tenant is way more likely to accept that over time. On your existing tenants, you want slow rent increases over time. If you ever want to jack up the rent a lot, like 15 or 20% or more, the easiest time to do that is between tenancies, not on the same tenant. But in the hot rental market that we had last year, I got 15% plus rent increases on the same tenant. They stayed and they weathered that. How do you handle a tenant that doesn't like your rent increase? don't back down at first. Okay, what you do is you keep that higher price that you want to get and offer them a bonus. For example, if they don't like the higher rent and you're having a hard time getting it, say, well, what I'll do with the new rent amount is I will get you a new refrigerator. Your tenant loves something like that. But see, it's still your refrigerator that they only get to use. So what you did is you just upgraded your property and you got the rent raise. So raise the rent if the tenant balks, offer a bonus before even considering negotiating down on your rent increase. And another thing I like to do, I think I shared this with you before, is that I find a subtle way to let the tenant know that I have a mortgage on my property, okay? That just helps them understand that you have a large, real, recurring property expense, and they're going to understand your rent increase more. But the primary thing that you want to tell your tenant as justification for the rent increase in the first place is that one of your real expenses just increased, like property taxes or your property insurance or your utilities. Okay, that goes along with the rent increase notice. Letting them know that you have a mortgage on the property, that's just a side thing that comes up somewhere along the way that'll help you over time. The eighth way is charge more for month-to-month rentals and offer your tenant different price tiers. Even if you don't charge month to month to begin with your tenant, all right, once a tenant has completed that initial annual lease, allow them to switch over to month, but at a higher rate. When raising the rent, try this trick. It's often used by marketers, okay? You don't actually tell them what the new rental price is going to be, but what you do is you give them 3 price options to choose from. And just think about that. Almost every big business offers 3 price tiers. When you offer 3 choices, consumers and tenants, what they tend to do is compare the choices that they were given rather than comparing that price to other businesses or to other landlords. Okay, a coffee at Starbucks, you might think that that's highly priced, but when they give the consumer options like the tall for $4.25 or the grande for $4.75 or the venti for $5.25, people rarely even consider that $1.50 cup of coffee that they can get at the gas station. So you could give your tenants an option of month to month, a 6-month lease, and a year lease. The shorter the lease, the higher the price. The 9th way to raise the rent and increase your property's value is to allow for pets and charge pet rent. Once again, fewer prospects means less demand, and when the supply of property stays the same, the only consequence is a lower price. So you want more prospects and more demand. Now, I wouldn't recommend renting to people with dogs in apartments very often. With houses, you do want to allow it more often. Opening up your property to people with pets, that increases your prospect. The reason that a lot of people want to rent a house rather than rent an apartment is because they have pets. And Americans just love their pets. Surveys show that 62% of Americans have a pet, and of those who do, 95% consider pets to be members of the family. And pets do some damage, though. Luckily, you can cover that with both a non-refundable pet deposit, say that's $500, and then ongoing pet rent, say another $50 to $100 per pet per month in jurisdictions where that's allowed. And it's good to set a limit on pets and not allow dangerous dog breeds. You should make more from pet rent than you lose in damages, but even if these charges are totally offset by more maintenance, you have dramatically increased your pool of potential renters and you reduce vacancy periods, and with more demand comes that higher price. The 10th way is maintenance and preventative maintenance. Some of the best ways to increase returns are to lower your expenses. Preventative maintenance can do just that. You shouldn't rely on tenants most times to replace furnace filters or clean off AC compressors or clean the gutters. But these small repairs, they can save you $1,000 in HVAC and foundation repairs. Some tenants, they just won't tell you about water leaks for some unknown reason, and if leaks go unrepaired for too long, they can cause dry rot and water damage. Regular inspections can find and address issues like this, so it's preferable to do them about every 6 months, but even once a year is better than not doing it at all. And further, good maintenance is the key to tenant retention. But if you provide good maintenance, this is going to go a long way in keeping you in good favor with your tenants. It's going to increase the chance of your lease renewal. And as you know, turnover is the landlord's biggest expense. So anything you can do to mitigate that is a good thing for your bottom line. You're going to remember that not long ago here on the show, I shared with you that I increasingly see lease agreements where the tenant must pay for, say, the first $300 of repair and maintenance expenses per occurrence. That's right, the tenant pays that minor maintenance item, not you, the property owner. In an area of low housing supply, expect to see more of that. Expect that to be accepted by tenants more often. That's a way for you to pad your bottom line. And among all this, of course, let's do good in the world here. We're not talking about manipulating people. Provide housing that's clean, safe, affordable, and functional. Do good in the world, and let's abolish the word slumlord. If you're doing that, you're not taking advantage of people. You, as the landlord, deserve to be profitable because you're the one that had the good credit to acquire the property. You had the responsibility to maintain it, and you took on the risk of having to pay back the mortgage. Don't feel bad about it. The 11th way is maintain contact with tenants in other ways. If you can find a way to positively maintain contact with them, that's going to help with renewals. And that can be something as simple as a monthly newsletter or a social media presence. And you could also combine this with your marketing strategy. So in addition to offering a pizza coupon to each group that viewed a unit, you can also offer pizza coupons for those who actually rented from you. And yes, this costs you some money, but it not only works as a good marketing technique, it also means that each month, while your tenant sent rent in, they got a little something back in exchange for it. That just makes you look more positive in their eyes. One property manager I know of, they ask for a prospect's favorite restaurant right on the tenant rental application. And then if there's a bad maintenance issue that was handled poorly, what he does is he sends them a gift card to that restaurant. So that is more personal, and thus it's more effective than a rent discount, and it's cheaper at the same time. Or you could put every tenant who paid on time each month of the year into a raffle and give away a walking pad or something like that. There are all sorts of ways to maintain a positive line of communication with your tenants, and doing so is really going to help you with tenant retention. And the 12th way to raise the rent and add value to your property is charge for amenities and perks. Look around for any amenities you can charge for, like parking underneath the carport, or you can create and rent out separate storage areas to your tenants. They're going to pay for separate storage because it's more convenient for them to store their stuff right there on the property than it is at an off-site self-storage facility. Charge even for, I've seen it before, adding a storm door, or charge for adding a ceiling fan. See, if you can charge for items like that, you can improve your property for free. And those are the 12 ways that you can raise rent and add value to your property. You really should approach the management side of your buy and hold business as not just what you have to do to own properties, but instead you kind of look at it as a profit-making business in and of itself. The more you can raise rents, lower costs, and increase retention, the better your bottom line is going to be. So good management can save even a bad investment, and bad management can actually kill a good investment. So be proactive in increasing your rental returns, or in suggesting just one or two of those 12 to your property manager. If you're using a professional manager, you don't want to try to change their entire business model and tell them to do all 12. So perhaps suggest one or two that you don't see them doing if you think they could do that. What you learned today is how to live the life that you were created to live, the strength of today's housing market, and how to raise the rent and add value to the property. Coming up here on the show, besides learning a lot from me, it's the return of influential investor and teacher Ken McElroy. He'll be here soon. Now, over the past few years, in the 1 to 4 unit space, rents are up, expenses are up, and your debt payment has stayed the same since your mortgage rate is fixed. But in the 5+ unit apartment space, rents are also up, expenses are also up. But see, the debt is up because those loans often have short fixed rate periods and balloon loans. It's really making some projects collapse. I'm going to ask Ken for his insight there about how bad it's going to get in the 5+ unit apartment space. If you like the Get Rich Education podcast and regularly get good value from listening here, or new perspective, or even a complete shift in your thought paradigm, I'd be grateful if you simply tell a friend about the show. Most podcatchers have a little 3-dot area or somewhere you can touch to share the episode with others through your social media. I'm really grateful for you telling a friend about the Get Rich Education podcast. Until next week, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.